Ryan Clark. Ryan, Louis Farrakhan, Malcolm X Clark, and his take, and I think this was this was on the pivot before the draft. He's clearly racializing this whole thing. I think much of what Ryan Clark said here is stupid and silly, but we're going to be treated to this type of conversation over the next 6, 7, 8 months, all throughout next season, and certainly today, depending on where Shedeur gets drafted. Here's Ryan Clark summarizing and talking about the Shedeur situation and pointing a finger at the white man very subtly, but let's play the clip.
My biggest problem with it is obviously the anonymity of all of the comments and all of the quotes and all of the things that we have had reported, whether it was Josina Anderson around the combine, recently with this quote from an offensive coach who says he's entitled, who says he puts the blame. I watched Shedeur Sanders get damn near killed for 2 years at Colorado. And I never saw him berate a lineman on the sideline. I never saw him cuss or scream at a coach. And you're hearing these things like entitled and these little pieces of the characteristics of his personality when we had a #1 overall draft pick get arrested for being orderly and drunk. And we had more people coming out and saying, okay, here is who the real Baker Mayfield is. Don't watch this video. Don't believe that what you saw of him is who he is. He's a good person. He's a good leader. He's this. We had more anonymous people saying those things. Shedeur Sanders never been arrested. Shedeur Sanders has never been in trouble. Shedeur Sanders has never misused his names to the point of taking advantage of people. You have Johnny Manziel, who missed the first game of his last year against Rice for Texas A&M because he was suspended. You have Johnny Manziel, who ended up getting a whole documentary about how effed up he was away from the field, but there was no anonymous talk about him. There was no one coming out and saying Johnny Manziel isn't a good person. Johnny Manziel is entitled. Johnny Manziel has an alcohol issue. And so to me, the way that Shedeur Sanders has been covered seems purposeful. It seems that there is some sort of intent to slander or defame. All of these conversations could be taking place behind closed doors, as they do for so many of these people, and kept there. But why him?
Wait a minute.
Ryan Clark is brain dead and a liar. And this is the problem when you do sports talk or any type of discussion without any resistance. When you play a 3-man weave, when you play 7-on-7 football, it's not real football. Someone needed to say, and Fred Taylor and Channing Crowder, they're not going to say this to Ryan. You know why there were no anonymous comments about Johnny Manziel and Baker Mayfield for the most part? Because they're white and you didn't need anonymity. You can say whatever you want about them, and people did. Colin Cowherd built a brand, or enhanced his brand, not he had a brand, enhanced his brand, attacking Baker Mayfield relentlessly. Everybody's free to talk about Baker's cockiness, attitude problems. There was no need for anonymity. Johnny Manziel, everybody talked about it on the record. He's white. You can say anything about a white guy. You can get on TV. White people, they're the racist devils. They destroyed America. You can say anything. So there's no need for anonymity. There's no resistance. There's no pushback to the out-and-out lies that Ryan Clark, or just the lack of knowledge that Ryan Clark speaks with. Real Estate Agents I Trust connects you with top-performing real estate agents in your area. These aren't just any professionals. They're carefully vetted to ensure they're leaders in their field. They're experts who know the ins and outs of best practices, thrive in the wild housing market. Beyond their skills, they share our core values that me and you both believe in. Real Estate Agents I Trust. The name really does say it all. Visit realestateagentsitrust.com. That's realestateagentsitrust.com. It's unbelievable that this guy can come out here and just lie on people and say, and just promote this kind of racial division when anybody with a brain could push back against, like, what are you talking about? You don't need anonymity. It's like Steve doesn't need to anonymously say, hey, Jason Whitlock's overweight. You can say that. You can say whatever you want about Johnny Manziel and Baker Mayfield. There's real risk to telling the truth about Shedeur Sanders. Your thoughts?
All right, well, thanks for letting me know. I could just go on the record with that. But Jason, first of all, when it came to Baker Mayfield, his attitude and his petulance was a big storyline. And you mentioned coward. I remember he actually had Baker Mayfield in studio at Fox, and it was a tense 45 minutes. It was great television. And I remember when he grabbed his crotch before playing Kansas, wouldn't shake his hands. That was a big story. But Baker Mayfield, I think, was a 3-time Heisman Trophy finalist, won it 1 year, led a team to the playoffs. He was a better player. Now, he had some physical, I would say, limitations, but he's turned out to be, I would say, a frontline National Football League quarterback. Okay? Now, as it relates to Johnny Manziel, sometimes it's lying by omission. Yes, he was suspended for the opening game after the Heisman Trophy season. Jason, remember what that was for? It was not for armed robbery. It was not for sexual assault. Johnny Manziel did this dirty thing. He accepted money to sign autographs. I mean, he did NIL before NIL. That's why he was suspended. And by the way, there were people that went on the record and said Johnny Manziel is not a first rounder. In fact, certain people said he's unplayable.
Merrill Hodge.
Merrill Hodge. I want to bring up Haji. Merrill, wherever you are, a lonely draft nation looks upon you. We miss him. And by the way, I think part of the reason why Merrill is no longer doing some of this, along with his health, and I hope he's okay, I think he was too damn honest. And Merrill Hodge flat out called it the way it was with him.
He certainly was too honest, and ESPN doesn't allow. But I'm going to circle back. All this conversation we just had, let's not underestimate. Maybe this was a strategy for great television. Maybe if they had been more honest, it's not great television because everybody would have been, if we were honest, what Pittsburgh did is not that surprising. They needed a defensive tackle. They said that beforehand, and most people thought that maybe Pittsburgh would take a flyer, but Pittsburgh is still thinking maybe they'll get Aaron Rodgers. There were people that were saying like, hey man, none of these quarterbacks really have a first-round grade on them. You and I talked about that yesterday, and there have certainly been people that have said Shedeur Sanders in any real draft is a 3rd or 4th round draft pick. I'm telling you, he's Dak Prescott. That's not a rip. That's just an acknowledgement. Last thing. Hadley provided some stat this morning that maybe 80% of the first-round draft picks last night were from the Big Ten or the SEC. And this has been a part of the other dishonest conversation about Shedeur. The Big 12 is really the Mountain West, and he wasn't playing against the best competition and the scouts that are evaluating. Because I'm telling you, Shedeur does some nice touch passes downfield, but just in terms of throwing into tight coverage windows as guys come across the, there's not a lot of film of him doing that. And so he didn't play in the SEC or the Big Ten against the best of the best. And that's hurting him a little bit. If he put up those numbers in the SEC or the Big Ten, maybe he does go in the first round. But we've never had an honest conversation about what Shedeur actually really did. 13-12, 1-8 versus top 25 teams, blown out in the only bowl game he played. That's Shedeur Sanders. Help us grow the Fearless Army. Pound that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with all your fearless friends.